Is there a way to paint with a broad brush what people should broadly be doing when it comes to eating? I feel like it's just chaos, man.
So many people are confused because a lot of influencers or people trying to sell stuff. Whenever I hear a claim, my first thought is always, I wonder if that's BS.
What up, what up? This is John with the Dr. John Delony Show, and we've got one of the most important episodes ever on today's show. So I'm going to skip all of the hooting and hollering. Kelly had a bunch of stories she wanted to tell. James wanted to show everybody a dance. We're skipping all that stuff, and we're going right to it. All right. So, no big secret. I've been talking about my new book for ages now. Talking about it. So I'm not going to beat you up over it, but I have to talk about this. If you were to drill down, besides mental health diagnostics and relationship issues, if you were to get beneath that, like about help fix my marriage, the next most common question I get is, what should I eat? Why isn't this diet working? What's the best workout plan, etc.? So in the new book, Own Your Past, Change Your Future, in my new book, I talk about, in one of the chapters, about what's gone incredibly wrong when it comes to our diet. With our food. We are way off the rails. How we consume food, the quality and quantity of what we consume, why we consume what we consume, what diet's the best, which diet's not the best, all the stuff. And then I get into the scientific manipulation of food, the marketing around food. We have lost complete and total control over this thing. It's bonkers. Almost 50%, half, 1 out of 2. All right, these are my families. These are your families. This may be you. This has been me. Almost 50% of Americans are overweight enough to negatively impact their health. 3 out of 4 Americans are pre-diabetic or dealing with some sort of metabolic syndrome. 3 out of 4. 3 out of 4. And we are responsible for stewarding our bodies well, right? I get that. But I don't think we understand how deeply and how far the deck has been stacked against us. It's important for us to know, and I don't say this lightly in drama. I'm not like some Pinterest influencer that's like, not like that. We have to understand the war that's been waged against our bodies and against the diet infrastructure and the food infrastructure, whatever. This idea that food development companies have hired psychologists, scientists, chemists, engineers, marketing execs to carefully design food to get us to overconsume. And the goal is to keep you eating and eating and spending and spending. And then it branches off into don't eat meat, don't eat vegetables, only eat fat, eat tons of protein, eat cardboard and tree bark. Just think about mushrooms. Those will fix everything. Whatever, all of it. And I just want to eat. I'm hungry. I just want to eat, and I don't want to feel guilty, and I'm tired of feeling shame. And what's not helping is these extreme reactions we've had in an attempt to fix the problem. And you look at disordered eating, which is the most deadly mental health diagnostic. And you look at whether you haven't eaten birthday cake in 17 years or you mainline pasta every day of your life. We've got to come to a better, more peaceful, more enjoyable relationship with food. We are in a snapshot in history. It will not always be this way, and it has for sure not always been this way. We are in a snapshot of history where food is so overabundant that we have an overconsumption issue, a challenge of what to do and when to do it. The story of how food interacts with our lives and what it's done to our psychology, what it's done to our relationships it's a chunk of the book here about the stories we've been told. And then we are left in the rubble to try to make sense of it. And we wonder why we have mental health issues, relationships with each other, relationships with our science community, relationship issues with our food, all of it. And so on today's show, I've got a guest, Dr. Layne Norton. I went and found who I think is the number one, if not the one of the top few nutritional experts on the planet. And here's why I think he's an expert. Here's why I know he's an expert. He has a PhD in this stuff. Other experts, when they need data, when they need insight, when they need opinions, they call Dr. Norton. And Dr. Norton also coaches other people. He walks people through transformations. So he's not just an academic, not just a scientist, of which he is a world-class scientist when it comes to nutrition science, especially protein synthesis and leucine, all these other cool things. And he coaches people, and he does it himself. He's also been a world record holder in like squats and deadlifts, things like that. He has been a competitive bodybuilder, and he's back on the track to compete again this year. So when I look for experts, I look for, do you know what you're talking about? Do you have insight into the field? Are you an expert when it comes to content? And do you do this stuff in your own life? And have you walked alongside a bunch of other people, whether you're a clinician, whether you're a doctor, whether you're a therapist, whether you're an athletic coach? Do you walk alongside other people and put to practice these theories, these ideas, this data, this research, this science? And Dr. Norton is all of these. I will tell you up front, the chance we get canceled on this one, or I do, he won't, is strong to quite strong, because we're going to get into what's the best diet, should we eat, what's the best workouts, things like that. We're going to get into the hard stuff. And I'll also tell you this, put your nerd hats on. I mentioned this in the interview. If you want to know what it's like when a couple of nerdy scientists go to dinner, there is some parts of this conversation that get real deep and they get real technical. Just listen and take in what you can take in and move past what you want to move past. And if you want to go deeper, we're going to have a couple of other shows down the road where we talk about some of the depth, some of the science, some of the reason why we do this stuff. And most importantly, we're going to come back to, okay, great. I'm a single mom with 2 kids just trying to figure it out. What am I supposed to eat? I am an exhausted dad. I got a great wife. We got 2 kids. I'm just trying. What am I supposed to do? Food prices are expensive. What am I supposed to do? We're going to cover that stuff here and in the future. So hang tight for my conversation with my good friend and brilliant and rabble-rousing scientist, Dr. Layne Norton. Dude, I can't even tell you. Your time is so valuable. I'm grateful that you joined me here. Easily, far and away, beyond anything beneath mental health questions, like for depression, anxiety, trauma, the next most common question I get is, what are you eating? Why are you eating? Why do you say mental health and nutrition and mental health and exercise? All that stuff matters. And so here's what's been a sobering thing for me the last few years since I started the show is I value being a good researcher, and more important, I value being a good consumer of research, right? And I got sucked into this last decade worth of what I would call like the neo-dietitians, where this new world of diets plus influencer internet charlatans has created this cascade of y'all should all be doing this and this and this and this. So for everybody listening, all of my chips are on the table with Dr. Norton, and here's why. Everyone who listens to the show knows I pay particular attention to people who do 2 things at the same time, both who are consumers of research, always reading the latest stuff coming out, and they know how to do it, whether they're in academic circles still or they know how to conduct studies. They've been a part of that, and they work with real people and are invested themselves. And normally what I find, Dr. Norton, is that people are either they're like I was, just nerds. They just read a lot, and then they extrapolate theories from mouse models and whatever, and then say this is what everybody should be doing, blanket statement, or they never consume research and they just tell everybody what they should be doing. So you are one of the few people that does both. You are one of the best at someone who I look up to, taking complex science and speaking it into a way that a single mom with 3 kids just trying to be a little bit better in her day can actually interpret this and understand it and then apply it in her life, right? And so much fellow nerds, you and I could have dinner for 4 hours and talk mechanistically and talk about this and that and hormone release, but 99.9, it's not helpful, right? It doesn't apply, and it's fun gymnastics, but it's not applicable, right? So you're so good at that.
And I think one of the big problems we have with nutrition stuff right now is so many people are confused because a lot of influencers or people trying to sell stuff. And to be fair, I'm trying to sell stuff. So,
I am too. So,
but they get people confused because people don't know what to focus on, right? So they'll they'll cite studies, even though they might be, in vitro studies or mouse studies or whatnot. And people will give that the same weight as people citing, large human randomized control trials. I'm like, wait a minute, no, these things are not equal. You know what I mean? Like these things are not equal. But the average person doesn't have the equipment to kind of tease that apart and understand. And so I think a lot of people have really gotten focused on the little rocks instead of the big rocks, right? Like they're stepping over dollars to pick up pennies, unfortunately.
What happened, man? Like, this is chaos. Like, you can listen to somebody and they'll tell you, if you're not a vegan, you hate Earth, it's just suicide, just killing yourself, just slowly, and you're a murderer. And then you got people like, all you need to eat is organ meats and rub, fruit on your face. Like, and what has happened? What happened, man?
Yeah, I think there's always been a little bit of that, but I think now you give anybody access to the internet, and anybody can proclaim themselves an expert, and you don't need, there's a real, like, if you're going to give medical advice, you can get in real trouble.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But if you're going to give nutrition advice, nothing's going to happen for the most part. Some of that is changing, but I think
for a year, Dr. Norton, for a year, I put butter in my coffee, man. I bought it. I bought it, dude. I did. And even worse, I proselytized about it. I told everybody who was like having a piece of, I was like, oh, I can't believe you're eating that. You know what you should be doing? You should be mainlining saturated fats into your, like, dude, what happened, man? I'm a smart guy and I fell for it.
Yeah. And honestly, a lot of smart people. So here's two things, because there's a lot of physicians who are making claims right now that are really poor. There are some good ones. And there's a lot of like engineers and all that kind of stuff. Just because someone, one, is an intelligent person and two, has a scientific background does not protect them from buying into BS. Like there is, in fact, some of the people with the most horrible cognitive dissonance I've ever met were very, very smart.
Yeah.
And the reason is they'll use their own fact that they're intelligent to go, well, I wouldn't fall for BS. Like, I wouldn't do this. Of course you would. Like, you're prone to your own BS, Whenever I hear a claim, my first thought is always, I wonder if that's BS. And I start there. And I think that if you're a good scientist, skepticism is something that you really embrace.
Right.
That's a good thing. Because once you finally do accept something that you feel very strongly about it, it has passed so many barriers to get there. But I really think a lot of the confusion, again, I heard a quote, which I really believe to be true. If we're talking to somebody one-on-one, it becomes pretty obvious quickly who has more knowledge on the subject matter, right? Like if you and I are talking and we start talking about mental health, it's going to become obvious quickly that you have way more knowledge than me on this subject. But if we're observing two people debating, both who have more knowledge on a topic than we do, we are horrible at determining who is more knowledgeable of the two, because we don't, like, if it's not our field, we are not equipped to evaluate the evidence. So one of the things I tell people, if you're not going to become, a master's or a PhD in nutrition, you've kind of got to find people to trust. And that's really hard because some people are just not trustworthy. And, they don't have a sign on them that says, I'm not trustworthy. But it's really kind of a dichotomy of what you should look for when you're trying to evaluate a real expert. So the first thing is they say the magic words, I don't know.
Yes, sir. That's it.
They say that frequently. Or they use words like may, likely, probably.
I was wrong.
Possibly.
Yes.
Yeah, I was wrong. I got this wrong. They flip-flop, right? Because I always say, if you continue to defend a position in the face of overwhelming data, you're not a scientist, you're a politician.
Yep.
That's what politicians do.
Have you ever thought about how a lot of us would drop anything to help somebody else, but we often don't give ourselves the same level of care? We spend time, energy, money on everyone else. But when it comes to making time for vacation, for exercise, for talking with a mentor, for sleep, even going to therapy, we don't do it. And we don't even realize it. We don't even think about it. You are worth it. This month, BetterHelp Online Therapy wants to remind you that you are important. that you are worth being well, and therapy is a super important way you can show up for yourself. BetterHelp is online therapy that offers video, phone, even live chat sessions with your therapist. You don't even have to see anyone on a camera if you don't want to. It's more affordable than in-person therapy, and you can be matched with a therapist in under 48 hours. Today, Dr. John Delony Show listeners get 10% off their first month. So decide to invest in yourself. You are worth it. And go to betterhelp.com/Delony to get 10% off. That's betterhelp.com/Delony. Dr. Norton, I want to walk you through the last decade of my life, okay? I even wrote some of this down to make sure I get it. So 10 to 15 years ago, I'm still exercising like the high school wannabe, like college wannabe athlete that I thought I still was. Every year I was getting a little bit bigger and a little bit bigger and a little bit bigger. And then Atia hits the scene, and he's somebody I have high respect for. Brilliant guy. He's the first guy that said, maybe we need to look at this differently mechanistically. Then I got into Gary Taubes, and then I somehow landed to Asprey. And then everything was about bulletproof and mainline stuff, right? And so then I would cook bacon, I would eat it, and then I would take the bacon grease and dump it into my coffee. And I was mainline. It was disgusting. But here's what happened. I lost a lot of weight. And what I came to realize over time is I would start eating at about 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And what you talked about earlier was at the beginning, I was probably having 7,000 or 8,000 calories a day. By the time I'd been doing this for 90 days, I looked like emaciated and like I had been left on a desert island for a while. But I was my caloric intake was so low, right? I just wasn't eating that much. But then I moved over to, Baylor and the calorie myth, and then I got my own glucose monitor and just started following all these fad diets. Man. Here's all the stuff. My wife used to say before we would, at the beginning of every month, before she'd go to the grocery store, she would just be like, John, what are we this month? Are we like raw vegan? Like, what are we doing? She was such a trooper. High fat, vegan, no carb, no sugar. I've done it all of them. Low grain, all of it. Nothing is more of a third rail. Me and you could sit here and talk about religious rights and abortion rights, and we get less drama than when you tell somebody don't drink Diet Coke or you should drink Diet Coke, right? So
it's probably true.
What are we supposed to do? Because I know how to read studies, and it's a pain in the butt, and it takes a long time, and it's easier just to scroll through Instagram. You know how to read studies. We do this for a living, and it still gets cumbersome. What is the average mom, just the dad who's just 32 and he's got 2 young kids and he's starting to notice like, man, it's hard for me to bend over now. Is there a way to paint with a broad brush what people should broadly be doing when it comes to eating? And then we'll get into exercise here in a minute. I feel like it's just chaos, man.
Yeah. So there's actually a lot that you just brought up there that's great to go over. So the first thing is people make the wrong associations. And it's just because something worked, it's important to understand why it worked, right? So we don't make the wrong association. So let's take intermittent fasting, for example, it sounds like something you did. People will lose weight on intermittent fasting and they'll say something like, well, see, it's because I was in fat burning mode and autophagy and my insulin was low. And it's like, no, dude, you didn't eat for 20 hours and you just fit it all into a 4-hour window and like, yeah, you lost weight. Right. But that is not sexy. That's not what sells people on it, because it just sounds like, oh, well, they're just saying I ate less.
Right.
And again,
it sounds a lot like disordered eating, right? So,
right.
Yeah, you just drive yourself. Well, congratulations.
And you just brought up something, which is you slowly got heavier, right? Like you lose some weight, regain it, lose some weight, regain it. But over time, you were getting heavier.
That's right.
Right. Okay. Then the next question is, all right, well, maybe some diets are easier to adhere to, right? Compliance is the science. And I really get into it like it's like the messaging behind what Dave says with paying off debt, right?
Yeah.
So people say, well, you should pay off the highest interest rate first. That just makes sense because of math. It's like, well, if we were doing math, we wouldn't be in this problem in the first place, right?
That's right.
Because this isn't an X's and O's problem.
It's a psychology
This is not
problem.
a knowledge issue. This is a habits and behaviors problem, is what it is. So when we look at, there was actually 2 meta-analyses done looking at various different popular diets and seeing okay, did any of them perform better in terms of fat loss? Also, were any of them easier to adhere to? And the research showed that none of them really stood out performing better in fat loss. And none of them appeared easier to adhere to, because adherence appears to be a very individual thing. What's easy for one person may be very difficult for another, and vice versa. And I think this is why we have, like, again, so much difficulty, because what will often happen, and I'm guilty of this. So I follow something called flexible dieting, which basically I have my protein, carbs, and fats, the targets for the day and calories, and I just focus on hitting those. And I try to use, quote unquote, good foods to hit those. But for the most part, I'm just like, let's just be consistent with this, right? Let's make sure we're picking up the big rocks. And like, I thought, because that felt easy to me, because previously I was trying to, quote unquote, eat clean. And here's what would happen. I'd eat clean all week. This is in college. I'd eat clean all week. My buddies would order pizza on the weekend, and I would eat like a whole large pizza, right? And it's like, hey, it's like a budget, right? So like, if you are great saving throughout the week, but then you go, popping bottles at the club on the weekend, guess what happens to your weekly budget? It gets blown, right?
Yeah, right.
Budget still counts on the weekends, and guess what, kiddies? Calories still count on the weekend. So I kind of was like, well, instead of like going ham because I feel so deprived, what if I just allowed myself to eat this stuff in moderation and just tracked it, right? So I started doing that, and lo and behold, it worked, right? In fact, I even did I joke, I did an entire contest prep, and I had at least one ice cream sandwich a day. Now, I'm not saying you've got to eat ice cream.
It's the greatest prep ever.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing though, because that stuff, even though it's tasty, you're getting pretty small like intake for quite a bit of calories.
Yeah.
So I would, by default, as I'm getting leaner and leaner, my calories are getting lower and lower. I'm going to have to adjust the foods that I eat to accommodate for that. Otherwise, I'm going to be really hungry.
Yep.
So again, a budget example is great, right? So if you make $1 million a year, right? If you can pay your mortgage, and you can pay your utilities and all your responsibilities, and you set money aside for all the stuff you need to, and then you want to buy yourself a real awesome sports car for $200,000. Is that okay to do? Maybe, right? If you can meet all those other obligations.
Right.
But should you do that if it's going to make you go broke, if you have a small budget?
Right.
Of course not.
Yeah.
Right. Well, this calories is the same thing. If you're an athlete who's, expending 4,000 or 5,000 calories a day, hey, if you want to have a slice of cheesecake or something like that, it's not going to hurt you, because like, it's just getting churned up in your daily burn. Right?
Remember that photo of Michael Phelps, his diet?
Yeah.
That gave me so much. I was like, oh man, I play YMCA basketball. I can eat 7 Big Macs then. You know what I mean, dude? That killed me. But you're right. He was burning up 25,000 calories a day. Right.
So,
oh man,
it changes what you do based on that. But really what most people need to do is get consistent.
You just use 2 words that I hate: intentional and consistent. I need something better than that. I need a bad guy and a special intolerance, and I need some genetic information. I need that.
The best diet for you is probably the one that you can stick to in the long term and be adherent to. And that is going to be different from individual to individual, and probably the one that feels. So in order to lose weight, you must practice some form of restriction, whether it's counting calories, low carb, et cetera, et cetera. But you can pick the form of restriction that feels least restrictive to you. And that's probably what you should do, because it's going to feel the least taxing over time, because consistency is the name of the game. And so
I want to interrupt there. Just so the listener knows, in my house, I eat a generally low carb, no sugar diet, unless I am mainlining ice cream and gummy candies, which happens. But my wife doesn't. She has many more carbs than I do. And I'm talking about grains and sugars, not salads and things. And so it's as simple as, when she makes dinner, she will make part of the dish without the rice in it, or she'll make part of the dish without the tortillas in it, or whatever. And we've been doing that for a decade now. We've both landed on, and I hear houses divided. That's just people not being intentional, not caring about each other. It's not hard. It takes an extra 3 seconds to not put a tortilla on something or but it's a matter of what you just said. Here's what works for us most of the time. And I can always look back when I look and be like, I just found 15 extra pounds I didn't notice. And I fluctuate a lot. I drop water pretty quick and put it back on pretty quick. It always comes back to what you just said, consistency and intentionality. Y'all know there are lots of things that make me nuts, but one thing makes me more nuts than anything else. Buying a home. And my friends who refinance their homes, they tell me it makes them nuts too. I love living in a new home, but I gotta be honest, I'm no good at buying one. And that's why I'm so thankful for people like my friends at Churchill Mortgage. Churchill is a Ramsey trusted provider who we've been sending people to for over 20 years to help with home mortgages. Why? Because they're committed to doing what's right for you. And that means walking you through paperwork that's way over your head. That means making sure you get the right mortgage that you can pay off as soon as possible, and they don't try to upsell you a bunch of nonsense that's gonna hurt you down the road. And most importantly, when you're making this big life change, you can actually breathe because you got an expert and a team who have your back. Listen, if you're about to buy a home and make a big change, save yourself the headache and call Churchill Mortgage today at 888-LOAN-200. Trust me, that's 888-LOAN-200.
This is a paid advertisement. NMLS ID 1591. NMLSConsumerAccess.org. Equal housing lender. 1749 Mallory Lane, Suite 100. Brentwood, Tennessee 37027. Programs are for select loan types only and are not available in all states or locations.
What about working out? What about exercise? There's the go run a marathon, and if you've ever been to a marathon, you see people of all body types. And then there's the don't ever run cardio again, just lift. And then there's the only do deadlifts and squats and bench press. Like, what are we supposed to do, man? I'm talking just the average character just trying to get a little bit better at their life.
Now, when it comes to exercise, if you're just looking to get healthier, because my background is I want to be the most muscular, strong human being I can possibly be.
And
so I'm
real quick, you were a bodybuilder, so you did all natural shows, which is for the casual listener. That's like all oiled up, like pose down, right?
Correct. So I've done competitive bodybuilding.
And then you hold world records like in the squat and deadlift.
So I've done powerlifting as well. So powerlifting is squat, bench press, and deadlift. And I was national champion in 2014 and 2015. Qualified for the world championships in Finland in 2015. I got an overall silver medal there.
Dang,
and I set what was then the world squat record, which was, and I was in the 93 kilogram class, which is 205 pounds. And I squatted 668 pounds. And so that's, all drug-free and, just belts and knee sleeves. That's it.
That's incredible.
So that was, I've got some.
So exercise is different for you than it is for me.
For sure.
I want to look good on camera. I want my wife to still think I'm hot, and I want the guy down the street walking his dog to think twice before he flexes up. So what am I supposed to do, man?
Again, what you will be consistent with, right? Now I will say, I think resistance training for anybody is about the healthiest thing you can do because you'll get cardiovascular benefits from resistance training if you go hard enough.
Yep.
You'll get it's literally the best thing for bone density as well. Obviously, if you want to change the way your body looks, there is nothing more powerful than resistance training.
Yep. And by resistance, Dr. Norton means lifting weights. Lifting weights.
Yeah, lifting weights. Now, whether you do machines or compounds or whatnot, listen, I love squatting and deadlifting. Bench press, I'm kind of okay at, so not as passionate about that. But for me, like today, actually, I've been coming back from some injuries. So just before I got on this podcast, I squatted 500 for 5 reps, which is the first time I've done that in a couple of years.
I did 185, suckers. How do you like that on my squat workout this morning? Nope, 195. I added a 5 on each side.
It's all relative. But me, that's like I got my music on and I'm into it. Like that. When I'm done, I'm like, man, that's like the highlight of my week right there,
Yeah.
But not everybody's like me. So some people love CrossFit. Some people like Olympic weightlifting. Some people just want to do machines because it's, you don't have to worry about as much stuff. Listen, whatever will get you in the gym consistently is what you should do. Because if you're consistent with it, it's impossible not to make progress over time as long as you are continuing to apply the principles that you were using to get there. So, I mean, again, just like debt, right? So some people are, $100,000 in debt. And so they use these principles, they get out of debt. Well, now what's the next thing? How do you progressively overload that? Well, now we're going to start saving an emergency fund, right? And then, well, now we're going to start putting some away for retirement. Like you're progressively improving, right? So in terms of lifting weights, that's okay. Like I've done this thing. Now I'm going to add more weight to the bar, or I'm going to do more reps, or I'm going to do more sets, right? Like those are all ways to progressively overload. So if you don't want to plateau, you have to continue to progress. But again, whatever form of exercise gets you in there and you find fun and you can be consistent with, that's what you want to do. In fact, for me, I'll have people tell me, man, you are so dedicated. Like you have such good willpower. And I'm like, dude, I love this. Like it takes willpower to keep me out of here. You know what I mean? Like, don't think I'm like some kind of like amazing, incredible human who just slogs. Like, listen, I have days where I don't want to go train. I do it anyway. But for the most part, I love that.
Yeah.
Like that's the highlight of my day. Right. So,
and there were seasons in my life when I was training, I loved being in the MMA gym and competing. I didn't like lifting weights. And then I know people who love to run, love to dance. I love that. It feels freeing, Dr. Norton, just to say, dude, just be consistent. And do lift weights. I'm even seeing some of the long distance runners now circling back and incorporating weightlifting as a cornerstone. It used to, when I was running, it was be as light as possible. Only sprinters 400 and below need to be lifting the weights. And now everybody's in on it. Just good for everything.
Weightlifting, whatever your sport is, weightlifting, as long as you continue to do said sport, weightlifting will just make you better at that sport.
Oh, I love that.
I mean, when they told basketball players, don't lift weights because, it's going to mess up your jump shot, whatever. And I remember back when I was in college, I remember one year Kobe came out and he was like 10 pounds heavier. And he just started, like that was when he really started taking over. And then obviously you see somebody like LeBron James, who isn't like a power lifter, but I mean, he's a big dude for an NBA player. And there's a reason that like he, for, a 15-year period, is most dominant player in the game. It's because not only did he have skills, he physically dominated people.
I know we have very similar upper bodies, me and LeBron. Like if I wear big shirts on purpose, but if I didn't have my shirt on, our upper bodies are very, very similar. That's not true at all. I'm lying to you totally.
I was like, do I call him on this? No.
Big secret. Almost all of us can control our thoughts. Yes, you can control your thoughts. You choose them. Most people believe thoughts randomly happen and that we have to give rent-free space to bad thoughts and scary thoughts and freaky thoughts. This is not true. Our world doesn't want you to know this because they want the privilege of owning your mind. No more. I want to teach you how to take back your thoughts. If you often find yourself lost in a tornado of toxic thoughts and anxiety and always on high alert, you'll have to be intentional about changing your thoughts, but it is 100% possible. In my new book, Own Your Past, Change Your Future, we'll walk through a not-so-complicated approach to mental health and wellness that includes learning how to reject harmful thoughts and cultivate thoughts that move you closer to who you want to be. So go to johndelony.com to take the next step towards wellness. That's Own Your Past, Change Your Future at johndelony.com. All right, hey, so as we wrap up, a couple things. Number one, the revolutionary nature here for the listener. This is someone I consider the top nutritional scientist that I listen to, period, full stop. And when it comes to what should I do, intentionality, write stuff down, and consistency. Keep showing up and keep showing up, keep showing up. Same with exercise. What workout should I? Just keep showing up and just keep showing up and just keep showing up and be intentional about it and write this stuff down. Along those lines, you have created industry insider, the people in the industry say that you have created the number one app for tracking this stuff, and it's called Carbon, Carbon. By the way, he's not on here pushing this thing. I asked him, what's something that, could we talk about this? I keep hearing it's so great. Tell the listener what's about this app.
So Carbon it's called Carbon Diet Coach. It's available on iOS and Android, and it's actually not just a tracker. So, if you have an app like, for example, MyFitnessPal. I'm not dogging MyFitnessPal because it's a great app.
Let's dog them, dude. Let's dog them. Just kidding.
It's helped millions of people. But the difference is, MyFitnessPal, if you come in and you say, well, I want to do X, it'll give you an initial calculation, and then that's it. And then you track, right? Our app is literally a coach. So what it will do is when you sign in, it's $10 a month. And when you sign up, you enter in some different metrics so the app can get an idea of where your starting place is. You tell it what goal you want. And by the way, it's not just a weight loss app. So we have like for muscle gain, we have for maintenance, we have several different things. And the app will use that information to formulate your baseline plan based on your own individual metabolism, what it's predicting, and then your goal. And then every week, you log your weight, and you can log it daily, and it will actually take the average of those weights to use for check-ins, because actually, as you know, John, daily weights can fluctuate a lot. You mentioned they fluctuate a lot.
Yeah, I have to take my weight every day over 7 days and average that to get any sort of, am I going in the right direction or not?
Exactly. I always compare it to looking at the stock market, right?
Yeah,
like if you just go in an isolated day and look at an individual stock, like you might flip out because it's down 20%, right? But you look at the overall arc of the stock market over time. That's right. It goes up, right? So you got to be, if you're executing on what works, like the app will work.
That's right.
But we recommend people weigh in every day, and there's a place to log your weight every day. And the app will use that when you do your check-in, so you do that every week. And based on how you're progressing, the app will modify your nutritional recommendations to optimize your response.
Oh, that's awesome. So it's not a static program that you just download the 12 PDF pages off the internet. It actually walks with you.
Correct.
Awesome.
And there's the tracker is very intuitive, barcode scanner, all that kind of stuff. And the great thing is, for example, let's say you start a weight loss diet, and 3 weeks in and you're actually losing weight too quickly. Mm-hmm. Like the app maybe estimated your calories a little bit too low. It'll raise them, based on what it predicts you should be doing to hit your targeted rate of loss. And then the app can even prompt you with different things. And we're actually working on making the coaching features even more rich. But yeah, it really acts as a guide to take the guesswork out of things.
I love it, dude.
We just really tried to because we offer, we have a team of coaches that do one-on-one coaching, our team BioLayne coaches.
Yeah.
But obviously everybody can't afford, a few $100s a month. Just like having a financial advisor is great, right? But not everybody can afford that.
That's right.
So for us, we were trying to see how can we get something that's affordable for almost anybody, at $10 a month.
Yep.
And then, make it user-friendly. And so that's what we feel like we've done.
Well, it's got a killer reputation. I'm looking forward to checking it out myself, because I'm going to get back in it, Dr. Norton. It's time for me to take that 185, and I'm totally messing.
Heck yeah. Well, and the other great thing is we offer all kinds of different dietary preferences, right? So part of the process of going through is you get to pick what you prefer. So whether it's balanced, which is what I do in terms of your carbohydrates and fats, plant-based, low fat, low carb, ketogenic, we have all those options. And then even within those options, you can shimmy it a little bit based on what your personal preferences are, to really, because our big thing is we really try to hone in on how can we maximize adherence? That's really what
consistency. That's so great. Yeah. Well, dude, you're one of the busiest men I know. You're a saint. Thank you so much for talking English to those of us who are just trying to get through the day and get a little bit smarter and figure some of this stuff out. And you're right. It's like getting out of debt. It's like fixing your mental health. None of this is sexy. It's just every day and every day.
You gotta do the work.
And every day. So I look forward to hanging out in Florida here in a few weeks, and I'm grateful for what you're putting out in the world. We'll link to this in the show note. We'll link to your website in the show note too. And
awesome.
By the way, your best protein in the world that I use. It's what I use. It's the best. And you do sell supplements, but you sell a few of them, and they're world class. So, and I'll link to that in the show notes as well. Dr. Norton,
Awesome.
I'm so grateful for your time. Thank you so much. To everybody listening, be intentional, be consistent, and get off of TikTok, for God's sake, unless you're checking out some of Dr. Norton's takedown videos, because they are epic. We have about the same size bicep too, right? By the way, brother.
Exactly.
All right, man. Well, take care, and we will talk to you soon. All right, brother?
Thanks, John. Appreciate the time.
All right. See ya. All right, so that was my conversation with Dr. Layne Norton. I told you weren't going to like it. You mean you can have Diet Coke? Yes, if you don't overdo it. You mean I can have chips and queso? If there's an energy balance, consistency, and intentionality. So if you want to make some significant changes, this is for real. Not for everybody, for most of us. Get something to write with, get something to write on, and be consistent about what you eat. Be consistent about, not pathologically, not insanely. Write down what you're putting in your body. Write down how you feel. Write down what kind of exercise you're doing. Write down how you feel. Be consistent. Be intentional. And over time, just like paying off debt, just like healing your marriage, just like being a better parent, just like being better in your mental health, healing trauma, little steps every day, over time. There we go. There's no big bad guy here. All right, and as we wrap up today's show, Kelly brought in these incredible lyrics of the Daft Punk classic, Harder, Better, Faster, Stronger. Goes like this: work it, make it, do it. Makes us harder, better, faster, stronger, more than hour, never, ever, after work is over. And it repeats that about 11,000 times. Take care of yourself. We'll see you soon. Coming up on the next episode.
Okay, well, I'm super nervous, so hopefully I don't screw up.
Have you ever listened to this show?
Frequently.
Yeah, I'm not that good either. We're good. Same team.
I'm taking custody of them in 2 weeks.
Oh, wow. So you filed for custody and you got it. So you're about to be a mom of a 7 and a 4 and a what? 3-year-old?
3-year-old. Mm-hmm.
Dang, Gina. Wow.
You know, I have a wife at home that's missed me all day. I have kids that want to climb. And then there's other days where I feel completely guilty and horrible because I just want to sit and scroll.
So somebody along the way told you that the way you feel about things, the way you think about things doesn't matter.
Some days, like, I can't even stand to be touched. Like, my husband will want to come home and give me a hug, and I'm just like, I literally will cringe and pull away. And it's like, just, what do I do?
Don't touch me.